Hi, I'm Pastor Willie Vaughn with Out of the Box Ministries, where we're all about creating digital resources to help you grow spiritually as well as succeed in every area of life. Today we're going to look to the words of the Bible, especially the words of Jesus, and see how it helps us prioritize in our life. Because we all have so many things we want to do, so many opportunities, so many tasks that we want to accomplish, that it can become overwhelming at times. So in today's story, we're going to look in the Gospel of Luke chapter 10, where Jesus kind of gets pulled into a little bit of sibling rivalry, and see how his words can help us realize that maybe it's not always just the things we have to do on our to-do list that are overwhelming, but how we look at them and how we internalize them. How the importance of prioritizing, especially in the context of our timeline and where we are in life, is so super important, and to realize that taking time to just sit and reflect can actually enhance our efficiency and help us enjoy life more. So as we get started, I encourage you, I want to thank you for joining me today. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to Don. Don, welcome to the ministry. I hope this ministry helps you grow in your faith and succeed in life. So let's get started together today by reading from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. And it says this: As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." As I look at this, I can see kind of the sibling rivalry, and maybe it has to do with the fact that I grew up the oldest of 8 kids, so I've seen it all. Usually the younger kids think that the older kids get to do everything, and the older siblings seem to think that the younger ones get away with it all. We all have our different perspectives, and it's the same here. But also, growing up in a family of 8, obviously, it's hard to keep a house clean, especially when both parents are working. So I remember when we'd have company, there was a lot of preparation and cleaning up to do that usually ended even continued even after the company had arrived, kind of still putting things away. So I can see where Martha is really coming from. And so a lot of people have talked about this and given the mindset, but I want to give a little context here to what's going on. You see, Martha is creating a meal. She's inviting Jesus into her home, and she wants her meal to be perfect. And so we can criticize her a little bit and say, oh, she's all worried about this and that. But I think it really started out with an altruistic motive. She wanted to show her love for Jesus. She wanted to make the kind of meal that the Messiah was worthy of. And so she gets into this. But I think what we see in this story is that it's not so much about the things that she had to do that were the issue, but it was about the way she began to look at it. Again, as we look into this story, how it describes it, it says, Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. See, there's a lot of things to do, and in our lives, I think we all end up with lots of things to do. And it's not so much, I don't think, about having things to do, it's where we're at as we think about them. And so Martha had these things to do. And think about it, Jesus was coming over. But as we know the story of the Bible, Jesus had people who followed him. Jesus had those 12 disciples that were usually with him throughout the time. So it's not just like having somebody over for dinner. She was getting ready to make a meal for Jesus, his 12 disciples, for Mary, who was probably going to be there, their brother Lazarus. You might know him from another story in the Bible where he actually dies and Jesus brings him back to life. And so Martha is creating this meal for 15 people. And again, putting that into context, it's this idea that creating this kind of meal takes time, it takes preparation. You want a lot to go into it. And so Martha is doing this, and there's a lot of work to be done. And yet Mary seems to be just sitting there, just listening to Jesus. But again, I think it's the mindset more than the to-do list that really comes about it. And a lot of times we can get into that mindset too. We start off doing these things with the best of intentions. We're doing these things because we want to. We're doing these things because we have the opportunity. But then they start to overwhelm and stress us out. Like I said, Martha started with this idea. She wanted this meal to be a time of worship to God, time to just show Jesus how much she loved him. But she ended up getting stressed out about all the details. Look what Jesus says. Martha, you are worried and upset about many things. The New Living Translation says, you're worried and anxious and upset about all these details. And that's how we can get sometimes too. Think about it. You ever get stressed out packing for a vacation? It's not that anyone's forcing you to go on vacation, but you get stressed out in the preparation. Sometimes you lose sight of the reason you're going away, of what you're trying to accomplish. Or maybe, like most people, you can have those Sunday mornings where you're on your way to church and you have those little arguments because you're afraid you're going to be late. But think about it. When you're going to worship God, maybe it's okay to be a few minutes late as long as you have the right heart and the right mindset. So again, it's not about having the things to do that overwhelm us. It's how we look at them. And so what we see in this story is Martha kind of taking this idea, this privilege that she has of being able to have Jesus, the Son of God, over for dinner. And instead of enjoying it as a privilege, she turns it into a chore. Have you ever had that happen? Have you ever done that? Maybe in your life, you started out with the idea that you wanted to be the best mother you could be. And so then you started volunteering for this PTA and that PTO and class mother and team mom. And all of a sudden, you might find yourselves so stressed out that it's actually taking the time away from you spending time with the kids. And again, it's one of those things, you start out with the best of intentions. Or maybe you wanted to start a business, and because you wanted the freedom to create your own schedule, but then you started working harder than you would if you worked just a regular 40-hour week. And instead of enjoying that freedom and doing what you love to do, everything became stressful and a challenge. And sometimes we need to get back to having that right kind of mindset, to do things in the right way, to be able to appreciate the privileges that we have. A lot of times we fill our schedules not with things that we even have to do. We fill our schedules with things that we want to do and then get overwhelmed by all the things that we've filled our schedules with. But we can take the time to stop for a moment, step back and say, hey, why am I doing this? What were my original motives? And why am I getting so pulled so far away? It's also important to realize here that Martha's stress doesn't even start to burden her, but it starts to affect her relationships. See, not only is she getting all worried about all these preparations, then it starts to harp on her sister. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. Hey, Mary, how come you're not folding the napkins the way I wanted them to? Or filling those orange peels with sorbet between the courses? And she's trying to do all this stuff, and she's adding all these details on instead of enjoying. But also, we see this in this story, that there's a priority that needs to be made, and within the context. And so we see Martha getting all stressed out, but Jesus tells her, Martha, you are worried about many things, but Mary has chosen the better thing, and what she's chosen will not be taken away from her. And so thinking about it, Jesus, who knows the fullness of the story, says, hey, listen, Martha, I know you want to have this perfect meal, but listen, my ministry here on earth is only going to be for a short while. I only have 3 years. And so the real important thing is what Mary's doing, to sit and listen. From our perspective, I don't know how many of you as Christians ever read the Bible and think, man, what I wouldn't give to be able to be there with those disciples, to see the things that Jesus did with my physical eyes, to hear his word with my own physical ears, how it would be great. And yet Martha has this opportunity, but she gets so caught up in all the other things, the distractions, that she doesn't make the right priorities. And it's not about making a meal as a bad thing, but Jesus is saying, make sure that in the timing that you have, to prioritize. And a lot of times we need to put things in the context of where we are in life. Often, Andy Stanley says this, we need to make decisions to say, no for now, but not forever. We need to be able to say, I want to do this, but I just can't do it right now. I'm going to have to put this off because there are more important things right now. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon writes, there is a time for every purpose under heaven and a season for everything. And sometimes you need to make sure you are having the right priorities for the right season that you're in, the right context, the right time frame that you're in. Maybe you have kids at home, young kids, and it's more important to focus on your family than pursue the career at this time. Or maybe you're just newly married. You know, in Deuteronomy 24 verse 5, it says, if anyone's newly married for the first year, they shouldn't have any other duties laid on them. They shouldn't go to war. They shouldn't get in the military. They should spend that time focusing on their relationship. And maybe you're in a season where you should focus on your relationship with your spouse if you're newly married, or if you have young kids at home. Or maybe if you're young, now's the time to focus on your job and your career or your education, where later on you might want to do something different. And it's not about eliminating these things from your to-do list, eliminating these things from your 10-year plan of the things you want to accomplish, but it's putting them in the right context, in the right time frame. And so we all need to make those choices of when we do things. It is so important to do things at the right time. Even in our day-to-day lives. I had a job at one point where my part of my job was to make deliveries. And I needed to make sure I did them at the right time. But that gets us into our next part of the thing. It's the understanding that Jesus said, you know what, Mary has chosen the best thing, to sit at the feet of Jesus. And sometimes it's about sitting. It's about being still. It's about taking a moment to just relax and do nothing. And that could be one of the most beneficial things that we do with our time. Like I said, when I was making deliveries, part of my job was to stop and in the beginning of the day, make a plan. I'd have to sit down and figure out where I was going and kind of plan out my course so that I could actually, if I left a little bit later, miss the morning traffic, hit all my delivery stops at the right time, and get back to a reasonable place before the afternoon traffic started to hit. Not only would this time in the morning of planning make everything go better throughout the day, I would actually accomplish more because I had sat quietly and just thought about what I was going to do. Otherwise, we could get into the day and just start going, doing this, doing that, and being busy the whole day long and actually accomplishing less. And so sometimes we need to stop and just take that moment to sit at the feet of Jesus. One of my favorite scriptures is in Isaiah 55:9, where God says, my ways are higher than your ways, as high as the heavens are above the earth. Are my ways than your ways, higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. And we need to sometimes get that 30,000 foot view plane. We need to get and start to look above all the busyness of our lives and all the things that we have to do. Now, it's good to see what's going on right where we're at, but sometimes to get a better perspective is look at things from God's point of view. Or maybe you just need to get somebody else who's outside of your box, outside of your situation, to get an outside perspective to help you look at things differently, so that you can take that time and say, hey, listen, these are the day-to-day challenges that I'm faced with. These are the things that I want to do and I'm trying to accomplish. But I need somebody who can look at it differently than I can. Spending that time with Jesus, but also not only that, not only getting that different perspective, taking that time to sit and relax and get a different perspective, but coming to Jesus. In Matthew 11:28, Jesus says, all who come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest for your souls. And sometimes we just need to take that break. It's not that Jesus is going to say, okay, I'm eliminating everything on your to-do list. No, it's not how God works, but God says, if you come to me, I will give you rest for your soul. The kind of rest that you need to have that emotional energy to be able to accomplish everything that you want to accomplish, to be able to fulfill all your responsibilities. In fact, in Philippians 4:8-9, it says, cast your worries upon him, and with prayer and petition, bring your request to him, and the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And it's about having that peace that God wants to give you when you come to him. Spending that time in prayer, spending that time at the feet of Jesus to just stop and reflect, to take a break from your busyness can be one of the most refreshing and empowering things that you do with your day. So again, in this busyness, it's not so much about eliminating all the things you want to do, but it's about doing them in the right way, having that right mindset, making sure you do them in the right time in the right priorities, getting the right things done at the right time and in the right context, and taking a break, taking the time to formulate your plans and giving your cares and your worries to Jesus so that He can lift you up, He can build you up in your spirit so that you can grow spiritually. Well, as always, thanks for watching, and remember, Jesus loves you, and so do I.